Marcus Wellington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city buzz below like ants in a concrete jungle. At 38, he had built an empire that most people could only dream of. His tech company had revolutionized online banking, making him worth over $3 billion. But all the money in the world couldn't solve the one problem that kept him awake at night. His 7-year-old son, Oliver. Oliver had been diagnosed with severe autism when he was 3. The boy lived in his own world, rarely speaking, never making eye contact, and had violent meltdowns that could last for hours. Marcus had tried everything. The best doctors, therapists, special schools, experimental treatments. Nothing worked. Oliver remained locked away, unreachable. The worst part was that Oliver had never called him Dad or Daddy. Not once. The child barely acknowledged Marcus existed, even though Marcus tried desperately to connect with him every single day. Mr. Wellington? His personal assistant, Jennifer, appeared at his office doorway. The new housekeeper is here for the interview. Marcus sighed. This would be the 14th housekeeper in 2 years. The others had all quit after dealing with Oliver's outbursts. Some lasted a week. Others barely made it through their first day. One woman had actually run out of the apartment crying after Oliver threw his breakfast at the wall and screamed for an hour straight. "Send her in," Marcus said, not bothering to turn around from the window. He heard footsteps on the marble floor and slowly turned to face the woman. She was not what he expected. Most of the previous housekeepers had been older, stern-looking women with extensive experience. This woman looked to be in her early 30s, with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. She wore a simple blue dress and carried herself with quiet confidence. "Good morning, Mr. Wellington. I'm Sarah Johnson," she said, extending her hand. Marcus shook her hand, studying her face. "Miss Johnson, I have to be honest with you. This job is extremely challenging. My son has special needs, and previous housekeepers have found it difficult to manage." Sarah's smile never wavered. "I understand, sir. I've worked with special needs children before. May I ask what specific challenges Oliver faces?" Marcus was surprised by her directness. Most people danced around the topic, or looked uncomfortable, when he mentioned his son's condition. Oliver has severe autism. He doesn't speak much, has frequent meltdowns, and doesn't like to be touched or comforted. He's very particular about his routines and becomes upset if anything changes. The housekeeping staff need to be very careful not to disturb his things or his schedule. "I see," Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "What are some things that Oliver enjoys? What makes him happy?" Marcus paused. When was the last time someone had asked what made Oliver happy, instead of focusing on his problems? "He likes trains," Marcus said slowly. "Thomas the Tank Engine, specifically. He has hundreds of train toys and knows everything about them. He also likes to line things up in perfect rows, his trains, his books, even his food sometimes." "That's wonderful," Sarah said genuinely. Children with autism often have incredible attention to detail and deep knowledge about their interests. Oliver sounds like a very special little boy. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. This woman actually seemed to understand. "Miss Johnson, I should warn you that Oliver has never warmed up to any of our household staff. He tends to ignore people or become upset when they try to interact with him. Several housekeepers have taken it personally. Children with autism often need more time to build trust," Sarah explained. "I believe in following the child's lead and not forcing interactions. Sometimes the best way to connect is simply by being present and showing respect for their world." Marcus hired her on the spot. 3 days later, Sarah started her position. Marcus was in his home office when he heard Oliver's familiar morning routine, the sound of small feet running down the hallway, followed by the crash of train toys being dumped onto the living room floor. Then something unusual happened. The crashing stopped. Marcus crept to his office doorway and peered out. Oliver was standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by his trains, but he wasn't playing with them. He was staring at Sarah, who was quietly dusting the bookshelf nearby. Sarah seemed to sense Oliver watching her, but she didn't turn around or try to engage with him. She simply continued her work, humming a soft tune under her breath. Oliver took a small step closer. Sarah kept humming and dusting, acting as if she didn't notice the boy's approach. But Marcus could see that she was deliberately moving slowly and keeping her body language relaxed and non-threatening. Oliver picked up one of his trains, James, the red engine, and held it out toward Sarah. Marcus held his breath. Oliver had never, ever offered to share his trains with anyone. Sarah slowly turned around, her face lighting up with genuine delight when she saw the train. "Oh my goodness. Is that James?" she asked softly. "He's my favorite red engine." Oliver's eyes widened slightly. He took another step closer and carefully placed James in Sarah's outstretched palm. "Thank you for showing me your train, Oliver," Sarah said gently. "James is very handsome. I bet he's really fast, too." Oliver didn't respond verbally, but he didn't run away either. Instead, he went back to his pile of trains and picked up Percy, the green engine. He brought it to Sarah and placed it next to James in her hand. Marcus watched in amazement as his son, who had never willingly interacted with a stranger, began showing Sarah his entire train collection. She admired each one with genuine enthusiasm, asking gentle questions that Oliver answered with nods or by bringing her more trains. When Oliver finally went back to playing, lining up his trains in perfect rows, Sarah quietly returned to her cleaning. But something had shifted. The house felt different. Calmer somehow. Over the next few weeks, Marcus watched his son begin to change. Oliver started following Sarah around the house, always at a distance, but clearly interested in what she was doing. When she folded laundry, Oliver would arrange his trains nearby. When she cooked, he would sit at the kitchen counter with his toys. Sarah never pushed Oliver to interact beyond his comfort level, but she talked to him constantly in her warm, gentle voice. She narrated what she was doing, asked his opinion about which cleaning products smelled better, and always acknowledged his presence without demanding a response. "Good morning, Oliver. I see you've lined up your trains by color today. That looks fantastic," she would say as she passed through the living room. Or, "Oliver, do you think I should dust the high shelves first or the low ones? You're the expert on organizing things properly." Marcus found himself looking forward to coming home from work just to see what new development had occurred between Sarah and Oliver. His son was still autistic, still had meltdowns, still struggled with communication, but there was something lighter about him now, something that hadn't been there before. One evening, Marcus was reviewing business reports when he heard giggling from the kitchen. Actually giggling. He couldn't remember the last time Oliver had laughed. He walked quietly toward the sound and found Sarah teaching Oliver how to make chocolate chip cookies. Oliver was standing on a step stool next to the counter, carefully measuring flour into a bowl while Sarah guided his hands. "Perfect, Oliver. You're such a good helper," Sarah praised. "Now we add the chocolate chips. How many do you think we should put in?" Oliver held up 5 fingers. "5? That's a good number," Sarah agreed. "Let's count them together as we add them." As they counted each chocolate chip, Oliver's face was more animated than Marcus had ever seen it. The boy was completely focused, but in a joyful way rather than his usual intense, isolated concentration. When the cookies were in the oven, Sarah helped Oliver wash his hands. "These are going to be the best cookies ever because you helped make them," she told him. Oliver looked up at her face for just a moment, actual eye contact, before looking away again. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. In all of Oliver's 7 years, the boy had made eye contact with him maybe a dozen times. That night at dinner, Oliver actually sat at the table instead of eating in his room. He didn't talk, but he stayed seated and ate his meal, while Sarah bustled around the kitchen, cleaning up from their baking adventure. "How was your day, Oliver?" Marcus asked hopefully. Oliver didn't respond, but he didn't get upset at being spoken to either. It was progress. After Oliver went to bed, Marcus found Sarah in the kitchen, putting away the last of the dishes. "Sarah," he said, "I don't know what you're doing, but it's working. Oliver seems happier." Sarah smiled. "He's a wonderful boy, Mr. Wellington. He just needed someone to meet him where he is, instead of trying to change him. Oliver has so much to offer, if you give him the chance to show you. I've been trying to connect with him for years, Marcus admitted. Sometimes I wonder if he even knows I'm his father. Oh, he knows, Sarah said confidently. Children with autism feel love and attachment just like other children. They just express it differently. Oliver talks about you more than you might realize. He talks about me? Marcus was stunned, but he barely speaks at all. He tells me about your work, about the big building where you go every day. He knows your schedule and gets excited when you come home. Yesterday, he spent 10 minutes arranging his trains to spell out Dad, though I think he believed he was just making a pattern. Marcus stared at her. His son had been trying to communicate with him, and he had completely missed it. From that night forward, Marcus began paying closer attention to Oliver's subtle ways of showing affection and connection. He noticed that Oliver always saved the red trains, Marcus's favorite color, for when his father was around. He realized that Oliver's seemingly random toy arrangements often included patterns related to things Marcus had mentioned. The breakthrough came 6 weeks after Sarah started working for them. Marcus was having a particularly stressful day at the office, dealing with a potential merger that could make or break his company. He came home exhausted and frustrated, barely managing to greet Oliver before collapsing into his home office chair. He was staring at financial projections when he heard a soft knock on his door. Oliver stood in the doorway, holding Thomas the tank engine, his most prized possession. Without a word, Oliver walked over and placed Thomas on Marcus's desk, right on top of the papers he was reading. Marcus looked at his son, then at the train. "Thank you, Oliver," he said softly. Oliver nodded once, a tiny smile flickering across his face, before turning and walking back to his room. Marcus picked up the train and held it carefully. His son had given him his most treasured toy to make him feel better. It was the first gift Oliver had ever given anyone. That small blue train sat on Marcus's desk for the rest of the evening as he worked, and somehow the stress seemed more manageable. When he tucked Oliver into bed that night, he placed Thomas gently on the nightstand. "Thank you for letting me borrow Thomas today," Marcus whispered. "That was very kind of you." Oliver didn't respond, but he pulled his blanket up to his chin and settled into sleep more easily than usual. Marcus was beginning to understand that his son loved him deeply. Oliver just showed it in his own unique way. And it was all because of Sarah, who had somehow unlocked a part of Oliver that Marcus had thought might never exist. 2 months had passed since Sarah joined the Wellington household, and the changes in Oliver continued to amaze Marcus. The boy who once spent his days in complete isolation now helped Sarah with simple household tasks and even attempted to communicate through gestures and facial expressions. Sarah had become more than just a housekeeper. She was Oliver's constant companion, his translator, and his bridge to the world around him. Marcus often found himself watching their interactions with a mixture of gratitude and something else he couldn't quite identify. Perhaps a touch of jealousy at how easily Oliver connected with her. One Tuesday morning, Marcus was preparing for an important board meeting when he heard shouting from Oliver's room. Not the usual meltdown screaming, but something different. Urgent and distressed. He rushed upstairs to find Oliver standing in his doorway, pointing frantically down the hall toward Sarah's room and making distressed sounds. Tears streamed down the boy's face. "Oliver, what's wrong?" Marcus asked, kneeling down to his son's level. Instead of his usual withdrawal when upset, Oliver grabbed Marcus's hand and pulled him toward Sarah's room. This was completely unprecedented. Oliver never initiated physical contact with anyone. They found Sarah collapsed on her bedroom floor, unconscious and burning with fever. "Oh my God," Marcus breathed, immediately pulling out his phone to call 911. "Sarah? Sarah? Can you hear me?" Oliver stood in the doorway, making soft whimpering sounds and flapping his hands. Signs that he was extremely distressed but trying to hold himself together. The ambulance arrived within minutes. As the paramedics loaded Sarah onto a stretcher, Marcus tried to explain to Oliver what was happening. "Sarah is sick, Oliver. The doctors are going to help her feel better. She'll be back soon." But Oliver didn't understand soon in the way other children did. For him, Sarah's absence was immediate and devastating. Over the next 3 days, while Sarah was hospitalized with severe pneumonia, Oliver's carefully constructed world fell apart. He stopped eating, refused to play with his trains, and had meltdowns that lasted for hours. No amount of comfort from Marcus could reach him. Marcus took time off work to stay with Oliver. But nothing he did helped. The boy would wander through the house calling out "Sa-ra" in his limited vocabulary, searching every room repeatedly. He would stand at the front door for hours, waiting for her to return. On the third night, Marcus was at his wits' end. Oliver hadn't slept properly since Sarah left, and neither had Marcus. The boy was lying in his bed, exhausted but unable to settle, making soft crying sounds. Marcus sat in the chair beside Oliver's bed, feeling more helpless than he ever had as a father. "I know you miss Sarah," Marcus said quietly. "I miss her too. She's going to get better and come home to us." Oliver turned his head slightly, actually listening. "Do you know how special you are to Sarah?" Marcus continued. "She talks about you all the time. She tells me how smart you are, how kind you are, how much she loves spending time with you." For the first time in days, Oliver's crying stopped. "And do you know how special you are to me?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking slightly. "You're my son, Oliver. You're the most important thing in my whole world." Oliver sat up in bed, looking directly at Marcus's face. The eye contact lasted several seconds, longer than ever before. "Dada," Oliver whispered. Marcus felt his heart stop. It was the first time Oliver had ever called him anything that resembled Dad. "Yes," Marcus whispered back, tears streaming down his face. "I'm your daddy. And I love you so much." Oliver reached out hesitantly and touched Marcus's hand. "Dada, Sarah," Marcus understood. Oliver was asking if Marcus missed Sarah too, if they shared this feeling. "Yes, buddy. Daddy misses Sarah too. But we're going to take care of each other until she comes back, okay?" Oliver nodded and, for the first time since Sarah's absence, allowed Marcus to tuck him in and kiss his forehead goodnight. The next morning, Marcus received a call from the hospital. Sarah was recovering well and would be discharged that afternoon. But the doctor recommended she take several days to rest at home before returning to work. When Marcus told Oliver that Sarah was coming home but needed to rest, the boy seemed to understand. He spent the afternoon carefully selecting trains from his collection, creating a small pile of his favorites. "For Sarah," Oliver explained to Marcus, pointing to the trains. "That's very thoughtful, Oliver. Sarah will love that you picked out special trains for her." When Sarah finally returned, pale and weak but smiling, Oliver's reaction surprised everyone. Instead of his usual overwhelming excitement that led to meltdowns, he approached her slowly and gently placed his selected trains in her lap. "Thank you, Oliver," Sarah said softly. "These are beautiful trains. Will you help me arrange them while I rest on the couch?" Oliver nodded eagerly and spent the next hour quietly playing beside Sarah as she recovered, occasionally looking up to make sure she was still there. That evening, as Sarah was preparing to leave for her own apartment to continue resting, something extraordinary happened. Oliver was helping Marcus in the kitchen when Sarah appeared to say goodnight. She was wearing her coat and carrying her purse, clearly ready to leave. Oliver looked at her, then at the door, then back at her. His face began to crumple with distress. "Sarah will be back tomorrow," Marcus explained quickly. "She just needs to sleep at her own house tonight so she can get better." But Oliver was becoming agitated. He started making his distressed sounds and flapping his hands. Sarah knelt down to his level. "Oliver, I know it's scary when people leave, but I promise I'll come back tomorrow. I'll always come back to you." Oliver looked at her for a long moment, processing her words. Then he did something that shocked both adults. He wrapped his arms around Sarah's neck and hugged her. It was the first time Oliver had ever initiated a hug with anyone. "Oh, Oliver," Sarah whispered, tears in her eyes as she hugged him back gently. "I love you too, sweetheart." When Oliver finally let go, he looked up at Sarah's face and said clearly, "Love, Mommy." The words hung in the air like a thunderbolt. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. His son, who had never called him Dad, who barely acknowledged his existence for 7 years, had just called the housekeeper Mommy. Sarah looked equally stunned, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh my goodness. Oliver. The boy seemed pleased with their reactions. He repeated the word with more confidence. Mommy. Mommy, come back? Yes, I'll come back tomorrow, Sarah managed to say, shooting a worried glance at Marcus. After Oliver went to bed, Marcus and Sarah sat in the living room in awkward silence. Mr. Wellington, I am so sorry, Sarah finally said. I never encouraged him to call me that. I would never try to replace you as his parent. Marcus held up a hand to stop her. Sarah, you don't need to apologize. You've done nothing wrong. But inside, Marcus was struggling with a storm of emotions. Pride that his son had finally connected with someone enough to use a parental term. Jealousy that it wasn't him. Confusion about what this meant for their family dynamic. He's never called me Dad, Marcus admitted quietly. 7 years. And the closest I've gotten was da last night, when he was upset about you being gone. Oliver shows love differently, Sarah said gently. The fact that he reached out to you when I was gone, that he said, da, those are huge steps. He loves you deeply, Mr. Wellington. He just doesn't have the words yet. But he has the words for you, Marcus said, and immediately regretted how bitter it sounded. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Mr. Wellington, can I tell you something? In my experience with special needs children, they often form their strongest attachments to the people who meet them exactly where they are. You've been trying so hard to reach Oliver, to connect with him. And that effort shows how much you love him. But sometimes, that effort can feel overwhelming to a child with autism. Marcus looked at her, confused. I came into Oliver's life with no expectations, Sarah explained. I wasn't trying to fix him or change him, or get him to behave a certain way. I just accepted him completely as he is. For children like Oliver, that acceptance can feel like the safest kind of love. So what are you saying? That I should give up trying to connect with him? Not at all, Sarah said firmly. I'm saying that maybe you could try accepting him exactly as he is right now, while still being his father. Oliver doesn't need you to be like me. He needs you to be you, his dad who loves him unconditionally. Marcus nodded slowly, beginning to understand. The word mommy doesn't diminish your role as his father, Sarah continued. It just means that Oliver feels safe enough with me to express his need for maternal comfort. He can love us both in different ways. That night, Marcus lay in bed thinking about Sarah's words. His son was capable of deep love and attachment. He had proved that by calling Sarah, Mommy. The question was, how could Marcus become the kind of father that Oliver needed? The answer came to him gradually over the following weeks. Instead of trying to force interactions with Oliver, Marcus began simply being present in his son's world. He sat quietly while Oliver played with trains, making no demands for attention or conversation. He learned Oliver's routines and respected them. He started paying attention to the subtle ways Oliver communicated his needs and feelings, and slowly, Oliver began to include his father in his carefully ordered world. It started with small things. Oliver would bring Marcus specific trains that matched the color of his tie. He would line up his toys to create paths from his room to Marcus's office. He would even sit quietly in Marcus's office while his father worked, content just to be near him. But the breakthrough came 3 weeks after the mommy incident. Marcus was having a difficult phone call with a client who was threatening to end their contract. His stress was obvious, and he was speaking more loudly than usual. Oliver appeared in the doorway of his office, holding 2 trains, Thomas and James. He walked over to Marcus's desk and carefully placed the trains on top of his papers, just as he had done months earlier. But this time, instead of walking away, Oliver climbed into the chair next to Marcus's desk and sat quietly, simply being present, while his father finished the stressful phone call. When Marcus hung up, he looked at his son. Thank you for keeping me company, Oliver. Oliver looked directly at him and said, very clearly, Dada, okay? Marcus felt his heart swell. His son was asking if he was all right, showing concern for his father's emotional state. Yes, Daddy's okay now. Thank you for checking on me. Oliver smiled. A real, genuine smile directed at his father, and nodded. Love Dada, Oliver said softly. Marcus reached over and gently touched Oliver's hand. I love you too, son. So very much. It was a moment Marcus would treasure forever. Not because his son had finally said, I love you, but because Oliver had initiated the emotional connection entirely on his own terms. 6 months after Oliver first called Sarah, Mommy, the Wellington household had settled into a rhythm that felt remarkably like a real family. Oliver continued to thrive under Sarah's patient care while gradually building a stronger bond with his father. The three of them had found their own unique way of being together, but Marcus knew their arrangement was complicated. Sarah was technically their employee, yet Oliver treated her like a mother. And if Marcus was honest with himself, he had come to depend on her for far more than housekeeping. She had become the emotional center of their small family. The situation came to a head on a cold December morning when Marcus received a phone call that changed everything. Mr. Wellington? Sarah's voice was shaky on the other end of the line. I'm afraid I won't be able to come to work today. My mother has had a stroke. I need to fly home to Detroit immediately. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Of course, Sarah. Take all the time you need. Is there anything I can do to help? Thank you, sir. I don't know how long I'll be gone. It could be weeks, maybe longer. My mother lives alone, and if she needs long-term care. Sarah's voice trailed off. Marcus understood what she wasn't saying. Sarah might not come back at all. After hanging up, Marcus faced the impossible task of explaining the situation to Oliver. The boy had been through Sarah's temporary absence once before during her illness. But this was different. There was no guarantee she would return. When Oliver came downstairs for breakfast and didn't see Sarah, he immediately began his searching routine, checking every room systematically. Oliver, Marcus called gently. Come sit with me. I need to tell you something about Sarah. Oliver approached cautiously, his face already showing signs of distress. Sarah's mommy is sick, Marcus explained, using simple words Oliver could understand. Sarah needs to go take care of her mommy. Just like Sarah takes care of you when you're sick. Oliver processed this information, his face scrunching with concentration. Sarah. Mommy? He asked. Yes, Sarah went to help her mommy. She loves her mommy just like you love Sarah. Oliver nodded slowly. Then he asked the question Marcus had been dreading. Mommy come back? I don't know, buddy. I hope so, but I'm not sure. The honest answer seemed to satisfy Oliver more than false promises would have. He spent the day playing quietly with his trains, occasionally looking toward the door but not becoming hysterical. That evening, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He called his assistant and told her to cancel all his meetings for the next week. I'm staying home with Oliver, he explained. For the first time in his career, Marcus put his son before his business. The week that followed was challenging but revelatory. Without Sarah as a buffer, Marcus had to learn how to navigate Oliver's world directly. He discovered things about his son that he had never noticed before. Oliver had very specific preferences for how his food was arranged on his plate. Vegetables couldn't touch the meat, and everything had to be in separate sections. He had a particular order for getting dressed, socks before pants, never the other way around. He could tell time perfectly and became upset if his routine was disrupted by even 5 minutes. But Marcus also discovered wonderful things. Oliver was incredibly observant, noticing tiny details that adults missed. He could predict the weather by watching cloud patterns. He had memorized the schedule of every train in his collection and could tell elaborate stories about their adventures, even though he rarely spoke in full sentences. Most importantly, Marcus learned that Oliver had been trying to communicate with him all along. The boy used gestures, facial expressions, and the arrangement of his toys to express complex thoughts and emotions. Marcus just hadn't known how to interpret the signals. On the 4th day, while they were building an elaborate train track together, Oliver looked up at Marcus and said, "Dada, good?" Marcus realized his son was asking if he was doing a good job, seeking approval from his father. "Yes, Oliver, you're very good. You're the best train builder I know." Oliver beamed with pride. That evening, as Marcus was tucking Oliver into bed, his son did something unprecedented. He reached up and hugged Marcus tightly, whispering, "Love Dada. I love you too, Oliver." More than all the stars in the sky. Oliver pulled back and looked seriously at his father's face. Duh, Mommy? Marcus understood immediately. Oliver was asking if Marcus could be both father and mother to him. If Marcus could fill the role Sarah had occupied. I'm your daddy, Marcus said gently. I'll always be your daddy. And I'll take care of you. No matter what. Oliver seemed satisfied with this answer. He settled into bed and fell asleep more easily than he had since Sarah left. 2 weeks later, Sarah called with news. Her mother was stable but would require long-term care. Sarah had found a good facility in Detroit but wanted to stay nearby to help with the transition. I need to give my notice, Mr. Wellington, Sarah said sadly. I can't leave my mother, and I can't ask you to hold my position indefinitely. Marcus felt his heart sink, but he understood. Sarah, you're doing the right thing. Your mother needs you. How is Oliver handling everything? She asked. Better than I expected, Marcus answered honestly. We've learned how to take care of each other. I'd like to talk to him, if that's possible. Marcus brought the phone to Oliver, who lit up when he heard Sarah's voice. Hi, Oliver. I miss you so much, sweetheart. Mommy, Oliver said excitedly. Mommy, okay? Yes, I'm okay. My mommy is feeling better too. Are you being good for Daddy? 1. All descents time sated. 1. Oliver looked at Marcus and nodded vigorously. Dada good. That's wonderful, Oliver. Daddy loves you very much. Love Mommy, Oliver said into the phone. I love you too, Oliver. I'll always love you, even when I'm far away. After the call ended, Oliver was quiet for a while. Then he went to his room and came back with a piece of paper and his crayons. He spent an hour carefully drawing a picture. 3 stick figures holding hands. 1 tall figure in a suit, Marcus. 1 smaller figure with curly hair, him F. And 1 medium figure with a dress, Sarah. He handed the picture to Marcus and pointed to each figure. Duh. Oliver. Mommy. Family. Marcus stared at the drawing, overwhelmed by his son's understanding of their relationships. Oliver knew that Sarah wasn't coming back to live with them. But in his mind, she would always be part of their family. Yes, Marcus agreed, his voice thick with emotion. We're all family. Oliver nodded seriously and took the picture to the refrigerator, where he carefully attached it with magnets. Over the following months, Marcus hired a new housekeeper, a kind woman named Mrs. Chen who understood Oliver's needs and respected his attachment to Sarah's memory. But she never tried to replace Sarah's role as Mommy. She was simply Mrs. Chen, another caring adult in Oliver's expanding world. Sarah sent letters and packages regularly, and they video-called every Sunday. Oliver would show her his latest train arrangements and tell her about his week and his improving vocabulary. She remained Mommy to him, even from a distance. The real surprise came when Marcus realized how much he had changed through this experience. He had learned to be present with his son, to communicate in Oliver's language, and to find joy in the small moments of connection they shared. 1 year after Sarah left, Oliver was playing with his trains when he made an announcement that stunned Marcus. Da, Oliver said seriously. Want new mommy? Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. What do you mean, buddy? Oliver pointed to a family photo on the mantel. Marcus, Oliver, and Sarah from the previous Christmas. Sarah, mommy far away. Dada, need mommy here. Marcus realized his son was suggesting that Marcus should find someone to marry, someone who could be a mother figure in their daily lives while Sarah remained their long-distance family member. Oliver, do you think Daddy should find someone special to love? Oliver nodded enthusiastically. Dada, lonely, need love. Marcus was amazed by his son's emotional intelligence. Oliver had noticed that his father was alone and wanted him to be happy. If Daddy found someone special, would that be okay with you? Yes, Oliver said firmly. But still love Mommy Sarah. Of course we'll still love Sarah. She'll always be our family. 6 months later, Marcus met Dr. Emma Rodriguez at one of Oliver's therapy sessions. Emma was a developmental pediatrician who specialized in autism. She was warm, patient, and most importantly, She understood Oliver's needs, without trying to change him. When Marcus tentatively asked Emma out for coffee, he was upfront about his situation. "I have a 7-year-old son with autism," he explained. "He calls our former housekeeper Mommy, even though she moved away last year. My life is complicated." Emma smiled. "I work with children like Oliver every day. Complicated doesn't scare me." Their first coffee date lasted 4 hours. Emma was fascinated by Oliver's development and impressed by the bond Marcus had built with his son. When Marcus told her about Sarah and how she had transformed their lives, Emma didn't see it as a problem to overcome. "It sounds like Sarah gave both of you exactly what you needed," Emma said. "Oliver learned how to love and trust. And you learned how to be his father. That's beautiful. Not complicated." When Marcus finally introduced Emma to Oliver, the boy studied her carefully for several minutes before offering her one of his trains. "This is Percy," Oliver explained. "He's a good engine." Emma accepted the train with the gravity it deserved. "Thank you, Oliver. Percy is very handsome. Will you teach me about all your engines?" Oliver nodded and spent the next hour giving Emma a comprehensive tour of his train collection. He didn't call her Mommy. Sarah held that title. But he accepted her presence in their home. 2 years later, Marcus and Emma were married in a small ceremony in their living room, surrounded by Oliver's carefully arranged trains. Oliver served as the ring bearer, taking his job very seriously. During the ceremony, when the officiant asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Oliver raised his hand. Everyone froze, worried about what he might say. "Need call Sarah Mommy," Oliver announced solemnly. "Tell Mommy about wedding." The officiant, guests, and even Marcus and Emma burst into laughter. Of course, Oliver wanted to share this important moment with Sarah. They called Sarah immediately after the ceremony. When she appeared on the video call, Oliver proudly showed her his ring-bearer outfit and introduced her to Emma. "This Emma Dada," Oliver explained to Sarah. "Emma nice. You still Mommy?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she congratulated Marcus and Emma. "Take good care of my boys," she told Emma. "I will," Emma promised. "And thank you for teaching them how to love." Now, 3 years after that first day when Oliver called Sarah Mommy, the Wellington family looks very different than Marcus ever imagined. Oliver calls Emma by her first name and has developed a warm relationship with her. But Sarah remains Mommy in his heart. He video calls her weekly and visits her in Detroit, twice a year. Marcus learned that families can be created in unexpected ways, with room for multiple sources of love and care. Oliver taught him that acceptance and patience can build bridges that seemed impossible to cross. And Sarah, though far away, remains an essential part of their story. The woman who saw a lonely boy and his struggling father, and gave them the greatest gift of all. The knowledge that they were worthy of love exactly as they were. Oliver still lines up his trains every morning, still follows his routines, still communicates in his own unique way. But now he does it all within a family that celebrates his differences rather than trying to fix them. When people ask Marcus about his autistic son calling the housekeeper Mommy, he no longer feels stunned or threatened. Instead, he smiles and explains that love doesn't follow traditional rules, especially when it comes to children who see the world differently. "Oliver taught me that families aren't just about biology," Marcus often says. "They're about showing up, paying attention, and loving someone exactly as they are." Sarah showed up for Oliver when he needed her most, and in return, he gave her the title that meant everything to him. "I'm grateful every day that my son knows how to love so deeply and purely." The little boy who once lived in isolation now has a father who understands him, a stepmother who accepts him, and a mommy who loves him from far away. His world expanded not because anyone tried to fix his autism, but because the people around him learned to enter his world with respect and wonder. And sometimes, late at night when Oliver is playing quietly with his trains before bed, Marcus can hear him having conversations with his engines, stories about families that love each other across great distances, about finding people who understand you, and about the magic that happens when someone sees you exactly as you are and decides that you're perfect just the way you are.